Does President Trump think white nationalism is a growing threat around the world? Because he said 6 weeks ago, I don't really. And it's a small group of people that have very, very serious problems. There are people in law enforcement and elsewhere who think, actually, white nationalism, white supremacy is a growing threat. And now we've had the second fatal synagogue shooting in 6 months. I'm not saying it's President Trump's fault.
And that's one of them. I think there's anti-Christianity. That's why the Sri Lankans were gunned down. They're not Eastern worshippers, Obama and Hillary Clinton.
Of course.
They are Christians.
But Islamist terrorism, nobody disputes that that's a serious threat.
Well, she wouldn't call it radical Islamist terrorism. Hillary, when she at her convention, she wouldn't call it radical Islamist terrorism. I'm talking about Donald Trump.
President Trump said he didn't
that's why he's the president.
He didn't think white nationalism was a growing threat around the world. And I'm asking.
He does think it's a threat, and there's no question it's a threat.
He does think it's a threat.
Yes, of course he thinks it's a threat. That's why he condemned it in no uncertain terms. And people
he
lied
said
about
6 weeks ago, I don't really think it's a threat.
No, they were saying a growing threat. But it is a threat. And
is it a growing threat?
It's horrible wherever it is, and it should be driven out. And people like Heather Heyer's murderer should be brought to justice, and indeed he was, and good. May he never see the light of day again. Let me make that unequivocal. But for Joe Biden, who's been in public life, who was elected at 29, to come out and have no vision, no accountability for the Obama-Biden record, didn't even mention President Obama, but mentions Charlottesville to try to use that for political purposes.
President Trump said he thought his response to Charlottesville was perfect. Gary Cohn, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, Cory Gardner, all loyal to President Trump.
You still want to talk about that because you want to pretend, respectfully.
You keep bringing up Charlottesville.
No, I didn't. You want to pretend. No, I was very happy on Friday or Thursday or Friday.
You brought up Charlottesville.
No,
I did not.
I was very happy on Thursday or Friday that you finally came out and said he wasn't talking about.
I've been saying it from the whole time.
But we're talking about white supremacy. We're talking about neo-Nazis. We're talking about President Trump.
Was President Trump's response on Charlottesville perfect?
But I'm also talking about hate everywhere.
Was his response perfect? Yes or no?
I think it was twisted for many years.
Was his response? He said his response on Charlottesville was perfect.
Because he knows, because intent matters. And he was talking about.
Was his response perfect? Gary Cohn doesn't think his response was perfect. Do you think
Gary Cohn stayed in the White House for many months after that?
But he almost resigned.
I think the president.
Do you think? It's a very simple question.
No, it's not a simple question.
Yes or no? Was President Trump's response perfect?
When President Trump condemned racism, bigotry, evil, violence, and then took it many steps further and called out neo-Nazis, white supremacists,
was
KKK.
His response perfect?
That is darn near perfection. When you're calling out, when you're calling out KKK, neo-Nazis, and you're saying there were people there who hadn't signed up for that. There were people there.
You know that President Trump left enough ambiguity.
All neo-Nazis, all anti-Christianity, all anti-Semitism, all anti-Muslim activity should be condemned. Dead stop full. That's the perfect response.
Anti-Muslim activities. The president called for a full ban on Muslims entering the United States.
It looks like you and others looking at 2020 are worried that this guy can't be beaten fairly and squarely. Why does Joe Biden come out and not say one thing about his Senate race? No, it's not beneath you.
That comment is beneath you.
Why would Joe Biden bring that up? Why is he using Charlottesville to launch a candidacy as somebody who was in the Senate for decades, who was vice president for 8 years, who's 0 for 2 running for president while Donald Trump is 1 for 1?
Was perfect.
I think that we're going to move on because I've talked a lot about white supremacy, neo-Nazi, KKK, and this president's denouncement of it.
It's just a yes or no question.
But see, how is this helping to stop the next shooter, this entire conversation where I'm saying the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world.
His response last night was unambiguous and clear.
He said hate crime before he even got on the plane to Wisconsin.
Unequivocal. His response to Charlottesville, according to Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, Cory Gardner, Gary Cohn,
all of whom worked with him after that,
was not unequivocal.
Because
you brought it up, so I'm pointing it out. These loyal supporters of the president did not think his answer on Charlottesville was perfect.
I think any time a president is willing to condemn people who hate other people based on their race or their religion, it's a great day for America, and that's what he did, and he did it several times.
The president called for a ban on all Muslims entering the United States.
So you want to revisit all of that?
I want to revisit a proposal offered by the president?
No, because you don't want to talk about things that are going to help this president get reelected, like the strong economy.
Let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about the economy.
Even though you had people in your own network saying it's going to be 1% or less, the 1%ers think it's always going to be 1% or less.
The U.S. economy grew 3.2% in the first quarter of 2009, surpassing expectations. Some economists do believe, however, that there are some less than stellar indicators underneath the top line. President Trump keeps railing against the Federal Reserve. He's worried about them raising interest rates. Here's the question. The economy is strong, if you look at that top line number.
Strongest probably ever in modern times.
Is the president concerned at all? Is that why he keeps telling the Fed not to raise interest rates? How concerned is he that the economy is not as strong as it appears on the surface?
The president's very concerned that if the radical Democrats in the House get their way, or if somebody else is president in 2020, that all these economic gains. We've had a boom, not gloom and doom economics. He's worried about the economic dynamism going away.
But I'm talking about his railing against the Fed.
No. It's his, but let's talk about the full economy. There's not just one top-line number here, the 3.2 GDP numbers.
I just said the economy is very strong.
There are other top-line numbers. There's record unemployment among African Americans and Asian Americans and veterans and disabled Americans.
You know that there are issues with productivity and
Hispanic
wages.
Americans.
You know that there are issues with productivity.
Well, here's the issues on productivity. We have about 500,000 new manufacturing jobs under this president. There were industries that were flat on their back, like warehousing, construction, mining, manufacturing, where those folks were told, gee, these industries are dead. You can't come back to them. We're going to outsource them. Those are back. Those are roaring back. We have 7.3 million. And he's always concerned about the economy. That's why he's done a fantastic job.
Okay.
And that's part of why he'll get reelected. And that's part of why when Joe Biden comes out, he thinks he's going to fight Donald Trump, but he's got to fight the Trump legacy, particularly on the economy.
So
and let's see if he can even get that far, because Joe Biden had a hard week vis-a-vis the Democratic primary. They don't even realize he voted for Bill Barr for Attorney General. They don't even realize he voted for Neil Gorsuch for the circuit
Barr
court.
was confirmed, 97 to nothing or
and
something.
Joe Biden was one of them, saying
So
he'd
let me
be
ask you a
quote,
question.
very fine Attorney General, and he's right.
The House Judiciary Committee subpoenaed White House counsel, former White House counsel Don McGahn, to testify in its obstruction of justice investigation. And Barr has said there is no obstruction, but the House is looking into it. The president did not claim executive privilege when McGahn spoke to the special counsel. Is the president going to try to block McGahn from testifying before Congress? Is he going to try to assert executive privilege?
Executive privilege is always an option. It's always on the table. But Don McGahn has already talked under oath for 30 hours. And this is just presidential harassment.
So he is
going to
is he going to block McGahn?
I didn't say that. I said
not.
It's his right. But those who are subpoenaing different individuals are trying to push aside the fact that we have an entire Mueller investigation that lasted 22 months, cost about $30 million. That is the expansive, somewhat expensive, definitive, and conclusive investigation. No crime was charged. No indictment was referred.
Whoa.
And if
there are lots of crimes charged, just not against President Trump.
Oh, come on. That was supposed to be the big fish here. I think this entire investigation, as your graphic said for 2 years.
His national security advisor, his campaign chairman, his deputy campaign chairman, his former fixer and White House campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos. No, not the president.
I've never met George Papadopoulos.
You said no crimes were charged.
No.
33 people and entities
that
have
had
been
already
charged.
happened before the Mueller report, and you know that. So let's not pretend that the Mueller report
part of the Mueller investigation.
did not land like a big thud and was not excruciatingly disappointing for many people who were hoping that Mueller would finish the job
I'm
Hillary
sure it
couldn't
was,
do.
but I'm just saying you said there were no charges, no criminal charges.
No, I like page 2 of volume 1, where they're talking about Russian interference in the election, but they talk about how it was unaided by the Trump campaign and unsuccessful in influencing the election result. You've got Hillary Clinton.
True. They also
never
said
be
that the
president
campaign expected that it would help them electorally.
Not the campaign I ran to a successful conclusion. I would never have talked to a Russian knowingly, and I was talking to people in.
Yeah, but people that were in the
Michigan.
campaign talked to Russians knowingly, not you, but people in the campaign.
Well, I think that's important, and not Donald Trump, and not a lot of folks who are still close to him.
No, but Jared Kushner and Donald
government.
Trump Jr. and Paul Manafort.
But again, that's all in the Mueller report.
Right.
And what is the result of that? No crime, no criminal conspiracy, no collusion, no help from the Russians that amounted to anything. So I think people are upset with Mueller and his investigators, people who are banking on them to do their partisan bidding. And Mr. Mueller, as you've all held him up, nonpartisan, conclusive, and the Mueller report makes very clear that, including with Don McGahn's testimony, that this president and his administration never obstructed, impeded, or interfered with the Mueller investigation whatsoever.
That's not at all what he says.
He said that they were able to do, the Department of Justice
He
felt
said he
they
wouldn't.
were able
That's
to do.
that's not true about
That is what the Barr memo says, that they were able to do
That they wouldn't
their
charge a sitting
investigation.
president because they're going by the OLC memo.
I think they're upset with Mueller that Mueller didn't interview the president, that only one question.
Mueller very clearly, even according to Republican lawyers, conservative Republican lawyers, kicked this to Congress to discuss whether or not there was obstruction.
There's a comment.
You're right. There was no criminal conspiracy proven. Absolutely 100%.
That's more than a footnote.
And I'll say it
That's
a million
pretty
times.
big conclusion.
But what you just said about
They
obstruction
didn't kick
is
it
not
to Congress. They commented about separation of powers. Congress doesn't have to take this up. They want to take it up because
he commented?
they want to do impeachment on
he brought up the
infrastructure. They want to
separation of
drag
powers?
the presidency down,
Okay.
not drug pricing. He brought up Congress.
Yeah.
Because he knows that this Congress would be hungry anyway to try to relitigate and reinvestigate. Look, they have a decision to make. Where's the public appetite, or indeed the political currency?
The public, according to the latest poll I saw, and then we have to go,
president?
is they do not want the president to be impeached, and they also think the president lied. And Kellyanne Conway, I'm afraid.
And he didn't. And so, and he submitted to answering questions. And I think people are upset with Mueller that he ended the investigation when
written
he did,
answers on
didn't
one
interview the
subject.
president, didn't charge a crime, and people had promised, including on your network days before, that there would be criminal conspiracy collusion.